Welcome back to Giggle and Grow
with Courtney
and Morgan. So this looks a little different, guys, but we are coming on here for a shorter episode to talk a little bit about boundaries in our lives and what that really looks like to us. And I know for a lot of other people too, this might be a time in your life where you're trying to set stronger boundaries, trying to figure out a little bit more about what that looks like to you and what your values are. So Courtney.
Awesome. So we're going to go over two different types of boundaries today. We're going to be going over your personal boundaries and your work boundaries. And we're going to be expressing some of our boundaries we do currently have and some of our boundaries that we want to work on and that we think might help you guys succeed in your day-to-day life. Morgan, let's start off with you and just your top 3 boundaries, whether one of them can be what you work on, one of them can be that you have nailed down, but I'd love to hear from, you're a server, you're in the serving industry. So we have a lot of people that probably listen to us that have done that and work lots, long hours. So I'd love to hear what your boundaries are for the serving industry and what you do as work to stay sane.
Yeah, no, and boundaries are something in my life that I've really been having to work on. I definitely don't have concrete boundaries yet, but I think we can use every day as a way to discover what those are, use those ways to learn more about ourselves and where we want to be in a month or so. So for me in my job now, and of course running Mo Smiles, being a part of the podcast, and also working full-time at a cafe, my biggest non-negotiable, especially since I've been starting all of this, is really my sleep. Sleep is non-negotiable for me. I absolutely need 7 hours, and if there's going to be something that's going to affect that, oftentimes I'm going to be saying no now. And beforehand, it was really hard for me to do that. I was the one that was saying yes to absolutely everything. It didn't matter if I got 3 hours or 8 hours. I didn't want to miss out. FOMO was larger than me than myself. And so no, sleep now is one big thing. So that's more into my work. But what about for you, Courtney?
One of the big ones for my work, I love your sleep one. That's a good one. For me, I think a big one is being my boyfriend's would argue that I don't do this all the time, but setting my phone like away from myself at some point in the day and like setting my laptop down, because I work in sales. So I'm constantly on my laptop, on my phone, constantly checking it, checking to see if prospects have answered me, checking to see if they haven't. And so by putting that stuff away for a little bit and like reading a book or getting away from that, that's a boundary of I have to set for myself, especially in work, to be able to be successful. I know we've talked about this a lot in our podcast of, getting away from technology, but that's a boundary that I uphold myself to quite a bit. And I like to keep consistent.
Love that you brought that up, though. That is actually something that I was really working on last year when I was working remotely. I found myself really stuck to my phone in all things. And so that I did take that step back. It changed my mornings drastically when I decided to not look at my phone for the first 30 minutes. Now, when I do that, I automatically feel those little anxieties coming up and wanting to start my day so quickly, and rather I need that time for me. I need that space for myself to get that day going on the right foot. So
yeah, so that's the boundary you're working on. That's great.
Yeah.
I'll say one that I'm working on too is probably a big one for me is, so I found that I get really anxious when I don't work out. So having some type of boundary of like moving my body, at least trying to, even if it's yoga, running, something one time a day, that's a boundary that I've been working on for myself, that I've been trying to stay within, because I step outside that and I'm like, I feel anxious today. And Morgan's seen it firsthand where I get so overwhelmed that I'm like, I forgot how to breathe. And so I think what working out really does for me is I don't even get to that point. Right. Like, and when I don't work out, I'm like, dang. So I've been trying to stay inside the boundary of like, okay, do this for yourself every day and you're going to feel much better. So
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at.
No, I totally
That's a personal one. It's a little bit more personal, but that's one I've been working on. I know we said work boundaries, personal, we're jumping around here, but that's another one that I've been really working on that I wanted to share. So
Absolutely. And no, and for me, it's kind of the complete opposite. I don't often get too anxious if I'm not working out, but my boundaries kind of come from the rest and recharge side of things. I have a really hard time shutting off my mind, allowing myself that 5-10 minutes rest. And often I find myself feeling guilty for doing that even. And that is overstepping that boundary for myself.
Mhm.
And so yeah, no, I find it interesting that you have a hard time or more so wanting to keep that boundary of working out. And on the opposite
Mhm.
side, I'm like, okay, I just need to rest. I need to relax. Working out is like way beyond me, way back there on the back burner.
Hey, at least you know that. Yeah. So I'd love to hear another personal boundary that because I know we said work, or if you have another work boundary, whichever one you want to speak to, but one that you are achieving that you feel like you're like, hey, I just started achieving this maybe this year, or you've done it for multiple years. I'd love to hear something on your side.
Absolutely. And I think where I really want to, or what I really want to mention is, like I said earlier, boundaries were not something that I really valued myself. I didn't even realize the importance of boundaries for so long. Honestly, even realizing the connection of being able to have boundaries while still being able to be myself was something that was way beyond me. So last year, I actually found myself in this space where I just felt like I was reliving the same vicious cycle over and over again. And it was simply because I had no boundaries for people, for myself. And so this past year, I've been really focusing on how to say no without giving an explanation. For me, I'm very much a people pleaser. I was living in that state of mind. And so I've been trying to grow and practice that every single day. And with that people pleasing sign, I think often I allowed myself to get into situations or spaces that I actually didn't feel comfortable in or maybe didn't want to. And because I was stepping those boundaries, I didn't know when to say no. And I felt bad saying
Mm,
no. It wasn't okay to say no. And I needed to
right.
explain myself to do that. Now, don't explain yourself. Say no. The people that love you, they're gonna understand that you can't do that on a Friday night or a Saturday night or next Monday. They're gonna know that you're busy too. And I mean, Courtney, you've been someone that helped me to really find that and to really help me grow in that side of things. You've never expected me to give an explanation. You're just like, hey girl, it's fine. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna do it next week and it's no big deal.
No big deal.
So
That's
I mean,
good.
for something that I'm growing in my life, I mean, Courtney, is there an area in your life that maybe it's something more personal? Maybe it's
Mhm.
something you're practicing and it takes that active mindset or practice of mindset or mindfulness to get there.
Oh, yeah, I have a good one, but what you said really leads into a quote that I wanted to share with our listeners is that
Yeah.
people learn to love you by observing the way you love yourself. When you establish boundaries and set standards, you'll begin to attract healthier relationships and genuine connections. And I know, Morgan, that's a big saying that you say a lot of the time. So I wanted to kind of do a 360 and
Yeah.
or 180 and just say, yeah, that's a big piece is like exactly what you said is, when you learn to love yourself, other people will come into your life that are good people. And the people who don't love you or quote unquote, don't have the ability to, right? Those people will fall off. And that actually leads into a great scenario is like, I've had trouble with certain things in my life where I compare I compare myself a lot, and I am not your average 5'11" skinny girl. I am very athletic girl, and I really struggle with comparing myself. And so a boundary that I've set lately is when I see myself comparing myself to other people, I do this with just about anyone because I'm so competitive. I love the competitive piece of myself, but I try to go back and say, okay, what do I do great? Because I'm only looking and seeing the things that I don't do. I'm only comparing and saying, here's what this person does. They're so amazing at this, this, and this. And I'm terrible at A, B, and C, right? And instead of doing that, what I've found is like, I'll be like, okay, what are 3 things that I love about myself? And I'll say, sometimes I say the same things over and over. One thing I love is I'm very energetic. Another thing I love, and I'll do 3 things. So it's just a way of like rewiring your brain because you get stuck in these negative patterns of comparing yourself. That's one of my biggest things. And so I've set a boundary is okay, anytime I catch myself comparing myself to other people, I'm like, no. We're not going to compare. We're going to say 3 things that you like about yourself. And it can't be surface level things. It needs to be something deeper, right? It can't just be like, I like my hair, which is one thing I like to say all the time. But I'm like, that's surface level. So let's get deeper and go, I like my energetic ability. I like my creativity. And I love my way that I am very loyal to people. When I go get my hair done, I'm very loyal to those people. And I love those things about myself. And I try to continue to do that each time. So yes.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up too, because something, I mean, kind of within the same realm there that I've been practicing as well is just taking time to really process and honor my feelings too. You know, when you do find yourself comparing yourself, it's okay. Don't be so harsh on yourself. It is, you know, a habit that's within, and taking that action after the fact, being mindful of where your mind led you and knowing how to lead yourself out of that after the fact too. Don't give yourself grace. Give yourself some time to
Yes.
really feel those, because that's going to help you feel lighter in the long run.
I agree.
That's
And I think too, when you start to rewire your brain and put these boundaries in place, like these personal boundaries where you say, okay, every time I catch myself comparing myself to someone else and I say 3 things I like about myself, you get to a place where you are no longer comparing yourself. You're
yeah,
no longer, and I have to do it all the time. You know, I still struggle where I have to look in the mirror and I have to tell myself, like, you are beautiful, because other people can see these things about you and you only see the worst of it all, right? You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And it's
Yep.
crazy because it just blows my mind what we see in ourselves and then what we go and see in other people. So I I'd love to like say this to our crowd. Treat yourself like you would treat your friend, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah. Love
and
yourself
have
like
that
you love everyone
boundary.
else. Yep.
Yeah, have that boundary, you know. And
Absolutely. And I think going off of what you were saying, Courtney, I think another important thing to say here is that you can still be really supportive of other people's struggles, of what they're going through, while still being able to completely love yourself, have that self-respect, and know what you need for yourself. Again, those values, guys, is so important to discover what those values are for you. The more that you are in tune with those values, the more that you're going to be able to have those boundaries. It's not going to come out of fear. It's not going to feel so uncomfortable, but it's going to feel like you. And people, again, they're going to respect that. So, again, don't be afraid to support others while loving yourself just as much, if not more. So,
no, that's beautiful, Morgan. I love it. I love
yeah.
it.
Ooh.
Well, I know we had a short episode today. Is there anything else we want to finish up on? I know we said a lot about personal boundaries and work boundaries, but I'd love to hear anything else that is on top of your mind, Morgan.
Yeah, no, I think as we really end this episode, I think it is important that work and personal boundaries, they can really go hand in hand. Don't overthink it when you are thinking
Mhm.
about what you need for yourself. I mean, a lot of times having a good sleep schedule, having, being in tune to what makes you happy, figuring out how to rest and recharge while exercising and eating right, all those things that matter to you. Don't let that
Mhm.
overwhelm you. Again, take each boundary one step at a time. And if you make a mistake, guys, it is okay. You can still be a really kind person and still say no. Prioritize your needs, set your own boundaries, disagree with people, being honest with others, challenging others' poor behavior is okay too, guys.
Mhm.
Walking away from those toxic relationships, some people come in your life to help you grow. They're not always meant to be here for the entire journey. But also, like I said, be okay with making those mistakes. Stand up for yourself and protect your time and space, because, again, that is the most important thing. So,
I agree.
Courtney, I mean, is there anything else you want to wrap up this conversation with today?
Mine's going to be more about work boundaries. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to set boundaries with yourself so you can have an okay at home life.
yeah,
Because I think a lot of the times, and I want to say this, I know we don't have a lot of men that listen to our podcast, but for the men out there and for girls who have boyfriends or brothers or dads that you see they overwork themselves maybe to death, don't be afraid to tell them, like, hey, it's okay to have a boundary of being home by 5:45, right? It's okay to have a boundary to shut your laptop at a certain time. And I think having those boundaries with your work self then can float into having boundaries with your at home self, right? And it all creates one place of self-love for who you are as a person. So
absolutely. Well, guys, thanks for
awesome.
joining us for this short episode. We will be back in a couple weeks to share some more self love and all things holistic health.
Bye.
Bye.